Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn English podcast.
Memorizing new words easily is one of the biggest dreams of every young person who is trying to learn English. And the good news is that with the right methods, the right habits, and the right use of technology, you can make this process simple, fun, and effective. Because the truth is that our brain was never designed to just memorize endless lists of vocabulary the way schools often teach us. Our brain remembers best through repetition, emotion, connection, and practice. And if you understand how to combine these principles with modern tools like podcasts, applications, and digital platforms, you will discover that remembering new English words is not a painful process, but an exciting adventure that makes you feel stronger every single day. And I want you to imagine yourself listening to a podcast in English while walking, exercising, or even lying in bed. And as you listen, you hear a new word, maybe a word like determination or curiosity. And instead of ignoring it or letting it pass, you pause for a moment. You write it down in your phone, you repeat it out loud, and then you continue listening. And later, you hear it again in another episode, and slowly your brain starts to recognize it, to connect it with context, to bring it alive in your memory. And that is the magic of podcasts, because they give you real-life context, natural repetition, and emotional connection. And that is exactly what helps your memory grow stronger. And here is the secret that many young learners don't realize. Memorization is not about forcing your brain, it is about tricking your brain into enjoying the process. Because when you enjoy it, your brain will hold on to it naturally. And that is why you must use podcasts, songs, stories, conversations, and even movies, because these give you rhythm, sound, and feeling, which lock new words deeper inside your memory. And another powerful strategy is visualization, which means creating a mental picture every time you learn a new word. So if you hear the word butterfly, don't just repeat butterfly, butterfly. Instead, close your eyes and imagine a beautiful butterfly flying across a garden, colorful wings shining in the sun. And now your brain has an image to connect to the word, making it unforgettable. And you can do this with abstract words too, like freedom, by imagining yourself running across an open field without limits, or happiness, by picturing yourself laughing with your friends. And when you add emotions and images, memorization becomes much more natural. And this is something podcasts help you with, because every story, every conversation, every example is full of emotions and situations, which means the words you hear come with context. And context is the best memory tool in the world. And young learners need to stop trying to memorize words in isolation, because isolated words are like dry seeds without water. They don't grow. But words in context are like seeds in fertile soil. They grow roots, they grow leaves, they grow strong inside your mind. And this is why podcasts are so powerful for memorization, because they give you context for free. And as you listen again and again, your vocabulary multiplies naturally. And here's another secret. Your brain remembers best when you meet a word many times in different situations. So the more you expose yourself to podcasts, the more your brain will say, I know this word. I heard it yesterday. I saw it in a subtitle. I read it in a book. And now it sticks permanently. And you don't even feel like you studied, but suddenly the word becomes part of your natural vocabulary. And if you combine this with active recall, which means testing yourself, asking yourself questions like, what does this word mean? Can I use it in a sentence? Then you will remember much faster, because every time you recall, you strengthen the memory, just like exercising a muscle. And technology makes this easy because you can use flashcard apps like Anki or Quizlet, where you add new words you learn from podcasts, and the app will remind you at the perfect time, not too soon and not too late, which is called spaced repetition. And this technique is scientifically proven to lock words into long-term memory. And imagine this. You listen to a podcast in the morning, you add 3 new words into your flashcard app, you review them in the afternoon, and the app reminds you again tomorrow, then 3 days later, then 1 week later. And each time you remember, the memory grows stronger until it becomes impossible to forget. And this is how young learners can build massive vocabulary in a short time, not by memorizing lists, but by listening, connecting, recalling, and repeating with the help of technology. And if you also speak the words out loud, record your voice, and use them in your own sentences, you are activating multiple parts of your brain at once: listening, speaking, writing, and reading. And that makes the memory even more powerful. And the truth is that the easiest way to memorize words is to use them, because words are not meant to stay in your notebook. They're meant to be alive, to be spoken, to be shared. And that is why I encourage every young learner to use podcasts not only as a listening tool, but as a speaking practice tool by pausing the audio, repeating what you hear, shadowing the speaker, and trying to create your own sentences with the same new words. Because when you do this, you're not just memorizing, you're internalizing. You're transforming the word from something you know to something you own. And once you own it, it will never leave you. And I want you to believe this. You don't need to be a genius to remember English words. You just need the right system, the right attitude, and the discipline to practice every day. And if you make podcasts part of your daily life, even just 15 minutes a day, you will be amazed at how many new words you remember easily, and more importantly, how naturally they come to you when you need them. Because memorization is not about remembering for a test, it's about making English part of your daily thinking, speaking, and feeling. And podcasts are the perfect tool to make that happen. And when you think about the real reason why young people struggle to memorize new English words, it is not because the words are too difficult or because their brain is weak. It is because the way they approach learning is often boring, passive, and disconnected from real life. But podcasts change this completely, because when you listen to people talking about interesting topics, when you hear conversations, jokes, stories, and interviews, you're no longer memorizing words as dead information. You're learning them as living tools of communication. And this makes all the difference, because your brain loves meaning. Your brain loves stories. Your brain loves rhythm. And that is exactly what podcasts provide. And this is why I always say that young learners should not limit themselves to classroom vocabulary lists. They should dive into the world of English podcasts where real language lives. And when you do this consistently, you begin to notice that memorization is no longer something you try to do. It's something that happens naturally, because the words you hear are repeated in different contexts, with different speakers, in different emotions. And this variety makes your memory stronger. And here's a simple truth. The more senses you use when learning, the more powerful your memory becomes. So when you listen to a podcast, don't just listen passively, but read along with transcripts if they are available. Write down keywords in a notebook or digital app, say them out loud, and if possible, draw a little image that represents them. Because by combining listening, speaking, writing, and visualization, you are building multiple memory paths. And when one path is weak, another path will help you recall the word. And this is why some people forget words easily, because they only rely on one path, usually reading. But if you engage with the word in different ways, it becomes much harder to forget. And I want every young learner to remember this. Learning English is not about studying harder. It is about studying smarter. And memorization becomes easy when you study in a way that your brain enjoys.
Now, let's talk about another very effective method that works beautifully with podcasts: creating personal associations, which means connecting a new English word with something from your own life. Because the more personal the connection, the stronger the memory. So, for example, if you hear the word ambition in a podcast, don't just think of its dictionary meaning, but think of your own ambition, maybe your dream to travel abroad, your goal to become successful, or your desire to improve your English. And suddenly the word is not just abstract, it is deeply connected to you, and that makes it unforgettable. And you can do this with almost any word, because every word in English can be linked to your life if you take a moment to reflect. And this is why journaling is another powerful tool, because when you write short daily reflections using the new words you learn from podcasts, you are not only reviewing vocabulary, you are connecting it to your experiences, your feelings, and your identity. And that makes the memory last for years. And I want you to imagine this. You listen to a podcast, you learn the word gratitude, you think about your parents, your friends, your teachers, and you write a short note saying, "I feel gratitude because they always support me." And now that word has become part of your life story, and you will never forget it. And this is how memorization becomes meaningful, not mechanical. Another method that works hand in hand with podcasts is spaced repetition, which I mentioned earlier, but want to emphasize more because it is one of the most powerful, scientifically proven methods for long-term memory. And young people who want to build large vocabularies quickly must use it, because our brain is not designed to remember everything after one exposure. In fact, we forget very fast. But if we review information at specific intervals, right before we are about to forget it, the memory grows stronger each time. And this is exactly what flashcard apps like Anki, Quizlet, or Memorize do for you. And the best part is that you can fill these flashcards with words you learn from podcasts. So the process looks like this. You listen to an episode, you pick 3 to 5 interesting new words, you add them into your flashcard app with the definition, an example sentence, and maybe even an image, and then the app automatically reminds you tomorrow, then 3 days later, then 1 week later, then 2 weeks later. And each time you recall the word, your memory becomes harder to erase, and soon that word becomes permanent. And the beauty of this method is that it only takes a few minutes each day, but the results are massive. And when you combine spaced repetition with daily listening to podcasts, you create the perfect system for vocabulary growth. Because podcasts keep giving you new words, and spaced repetition makes sure you never lose them. And this is why I always tell young learners, don't just listen and forget, listen and capture, listen and review, listen and use. Because those 4 steps, capture, review, recall, and use, are the golden cycle of memorization. And if you practice them consistently, your vocabulary will grow like a tree, strong, wide, and full of life. But let us not forget another essential part of easy memorization: repetition through variety. Because one of the reasons students get bored is that they repeat words in the same way again and again, and the brain hates monotony but loves novelty. So you need to repeat words in different ways, in different contexts, and with different activities. And this is another area where podcasts shine, because there are so many different types of podcasts: interviews, stories, news, motivational talks, language learning shows. And when you hear the same word across different episodes and formats, your brain sees it as both repetition and novelty at the same time. And that makes memorization more powerful. And you can push this even further by intentionally searching for the same word in different media. So if you learn the word challenge in a podcast, you can also search it in YouTube videos, in articles, in songs, and in social media posts. And suddenly you are surrounded by the word, and your brain says, "This is important. This keeps showing up. I must remember it." And this is how you create an environment where memorization becomes automatic. And one more strategy that young learners should never ignore is active usage. Because no matter how many podcasts you listen to, No matter how many times you hear a word, if you never use it, you will eventually forget it. And this is why it is crucial to speak the word, write it, and bring it into your daily communication, even if you make mistakes. Because usage is the final step that makes a word part of your active vocabulary, not just your passive recognition. So after you listen to a podcast and learn a few new words, challenge yourself to use them the same day. Maybe in a conversation with a friend, in a short voice message, or in a journal entry. And don't be afraid of being wrong, because mistakes are proof of learning. And technology gives you safe spaces to practice. Whether it's language exchange apps, online communities, or even recording your own short podcast where you talk about what you learned. Because the more you use the new words, the more confident and natural they become, and the faster you memorize them forever. So remember, young learner, memorizing new words is not about force or pressure. It's about using podcasts, repetition, personal connection, and active practice every day. And if you commit to this journey, your vocabulary will grow naturally, your confidence will soar, and soon English will no longer be a challenge, but a tool you own, a voice you can use, and a world you can explore. And the moment you start, your future in English begins today.